Welcome in to the New Orleans Pelicans Podcast, the official podcast of your New Orleans Pelicans. A podcast dedicated to everything you need to know about the squad. Hear from players, coaches, broadcasters, and those who cover the NBA on a daily basis. It's time to flock up. The New Orleans Pelicans Podcast starts right now.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of the New Orleans Pelicans Podcast, official podcast of your New Orleans Pelicans. A full week of pods. We are back at it. Jim Eichenhofer, Gus Kattengell with you. Happy New Year. We did that a little bit last year, but last week, but here we are, 2025, and Jim to welcome us to a brand new calendar year, a win streak.
It feels good, Gus. It really does. I mean, obviously, the Pelicans went through some long losing streaks before this weekend. And to be able to get to two victories against the Wizards, it's a good feeling around here. They just need to keep it up.
Yeah, no doubt. Back on Friday, the Pelicans picking up a win, 132-120. CJ McCollum with 50 points.
Right corner, Jose for three. No good. No. Rebound taken by Carrington. Throw it out long to Brogdon, who leaked out. She'll get a block by Hawkins. And then Jose, GTA's George. Alley-oop, Trey Murphy. My goodness, what a sequence. Wow. Oh, Messi, another stuff on an attempted layup by Poole.
Oh, that's Mr. Messi to you.
Back the other way, McCollum for three. Right wing rattles in.
Bucket getter.
Chest it over to McCollum, right side. Step back, take a three. Got it. Timeout, Washington. It's a 14-2 start to the third quarter for the Pelicans. Up top, McCollum set his feet for three. That is lucky number 7 for Christian James McCollum.
CJ cooking with fish grease in this one.
Get it to CJ, another three. My heavens, from the right wing, CJ with now 8.
On a heater.
Chest it to McCollum. Right wing three. Number 9 for CJ. That's a season high. This double. Stop, pop, right wing three.
Oh my goodness.
That is number 10 for CJ McCollum.
That ain't nothing but heat.
He's got an even 40 points.
He caught that and wasn't squared up.
Is 10 three-pointers pretty good, Jim?
Yeah, I would say that's pretty good. I'd say that's almost the best in franchise history, which a record that Mr. McCollum also owns himself. He was inches away from matching his team record of 11 threes, but we'll take 10, Gus. We'll gladly go into the night with that one in our back pocket.
That's not a bad thing.
I'd like to interject and say that.
Whoa!
And say that's pretty good as well.
Well, look here.
Gus
That
and
is
Jim.
that's the voice of the New Orleans Pelicans that we just heard, and now we're hearing live again.
We don't have that many surprise guests, but it's great to have Graf here.
It's like being a ventriloquist.
Yeah, well, if you just would have stayed a little half hour later, you could be doing snow angels in D.C. right now. Did you see all the snow over there?
We got out just in time.
Yes, just in the nick of time. Head coach Willie Green on the win back on Friday.
Yeah, it's hopefully, it's giving people some hope, some joy, maybe getting away from the difficulties that we've all been kind of facing the last few days or so. And so credit goes to our guys, stepping on the floor tonight and, competing at a high level and coming away with this win.
And Jim, you heard Coach touch on it there. Obviously, CJ and all the players did as well. Look, it hadn't even been a week since the tragic events that unfolded here in the city. And you felt it in the arena. There was that moment of silence before the game, and you could just hear it in the highlights there. You wouldn't have known that's a 5-win team, right? I think people in that arena were just waiting and hoping to kind of have some good basketball. And to that point, like Coach just said, just for that 2-hour moment, kind of feel normal.
Sure. I mean, several of the players have mentioned this as well, that it feels kind of crass to even compare, a basketball game or a win to what happened on Wednesday, just because, I mean, there's no comparison. I mean, it was horrible. It was one of the worst things that's happened in the country in a long time. But, I mean, just from a basketball standpoint, to be able to get those wins was good. I mean, it did feel like just getting Jose back in some of the plays that he made. Obviously, CJ coming through with 50 points. It was a good feeling, at least momentarily, to kind of put what happened Wednesday in the back of mind, but then it immediately kind of goes right back to the forefront as soon as you turn on the news and you watch everything and you hear about just the horrible act that person committed on Wednesday.
Yeah, no doubt. And then it was these two teams again, this time in D.C., as you just heard from the graph here, as he's now left us. He just blessed us with his presence for just to make a comment. That's basically what he did.
Okay.
But yeah, so look, you wanted to follow that up again, right, with another good, solid performance. And Trey Murphy came out to play.
Outlet to McCollum, front court left. One-on-one with Bub Carrington. Through the legs. Chests it over to Murphy. Murphy drives center of the lane. Watch out below! Oh, my heavens! Double clutch Trey Murphy. Intense dunk with two hands.
Some of the dunks are good. Those are nice. CJ McCollum continued to shoot well.
McCollum. Picked up by Sarr, step back, left, angle three! Nothing but net over the 7-foot Alex Sarr. 5 made threes and 7 attempts from McCollum.
Did I mention the dunking? Because you know that makes me happy.
Butler to the rack, missed the layup. Misi affected it. Herb outlet to Murray. Dump it off for Eve! Two-head flush! Great pass, better finish. George front court, up top Butler, wide open three. Front iron, long rebound, Brandon Boston. Herb leaked out. Herb, one dribble, two-hand flush over Kyle Kuzma.
I love when the PA announcer in an opposing arena, you hear timeout, and it's the home team. That's always a good. Two dunks in that sequence.
It is funny to hear the difference between the crowd reaction of the game Friday and the game Sunday, of like the dour expression from the PA announcer, like you said, and you hear people in the crowd just kind of, whatever reaction there is more just kind of people being upset. So it's been a long time since we heard that as well. The second game of the season was their last road win, so that was sweet to be able to get that victory in Washington.
Yeah, that's a long streak, Jim. That's a long streak. So, since you won 2 in a row, long streak since you won on the road. 20 seconds here from Coach.
Yeah, it was better. Better job tonight defensively. I thought we got off to a good start. That helped us a ton. First quarter points, 33 points in the first quarter. And it was really off our defense, getting steals, finishing possessions when we contested shots. And it allowed us to get out in transition, 17 points in transition. Pretty solid night for us.
All right, so 2 games against the Wizards, 2 wins. Now let's transition into why, Jim, you think the Pelicans have won 2 games in a row. There's some things that stand out in some players.
Sure. One thing, too, that Willie Green talked about there was the defense was better. One of the things that I pointed out Sunday night was the Wizards scored 68 points in the first half Friday. They only scored 43 in the first half on Sunday. So, my math tells me that's a 25-point difference right there. So, yeah. Just much better. And, Washington only ended up with 98 points at the end of the game as well. That was only the second time this season that the Pelicans have held the opponent under 100 points. So both of those were wins. So that was really good to see. But, we've seen, from a team standpoint, I think the biggest change that has happened lately over the last handful of games, specifically the last 5 games, the Pelicans are 7th in three-point percentage at 37.2. Prior to Christmas, or through Christmas, they were 26th in that stat at 33.2. So they've shot 4% better from three-point range lately. And even more drastically, before Christmas, they were 30th in the league in three-pointers made per game at 11.1 per game. Over the last 5 games, they're 6th with 14.8 per game. So, you went from the least productive three-point shooting team to in the top 6 over this recent span. That's been a huge difference, and just explains the way that not only they were able to get those wins on the weekend, but they won pretty comfortably. And then also, along the same lines of the three-point shooting and the scoring, offense being a lot better. Over the last 5 games, CJ McCollum is 3rd in the NBA in scoring at 32.4 points per game. The only 2 guys that have averaged more points over every team's last 5 games is Jokic at 36.6 and SGA at 34.0. So, that's some pretty good company for CJ. And then Trey Murphy is 20th in the NBA in scoring over the last 5 games, so at 25.2. He's tied with Anthony Edwards in scoring over that span. So, we know Trey Murphy is talented. We know that he has a ton of potential, but I feel like we're starting to really see that come through in the results and the outcomes on the court. The fact that he's been in that category of one of the top 20 scorers in the NBA over this recent stretch. Now, obviously, we're going to wait to hear more information on his injury. We don't have an update as of Monday morning while we record this, but I mean, he's been playing his best basketball of his career. And you take those two guys, and we talked about this a lot earlier in the season, that both of those guys were shooting way below what they've done throughout their career. Now you flip it the other way, and they're among the best scorers and shooters in the league over the last week or two. And so you see now the wins are starting to come with the way that they're been playing, and the offense now is not struggling nearly as much as it had been earlier in the season.
And I was going to give you a pat on the back there, some flowers, because you've been saying it. It's something that you've been bringing up through the podcast as the season has gone on, that it was not to put words in your mouth that I don't remember them, but it was almost like it doesn't make sense. It's unspeakable. Like these players, these guys are better shooters than this. It has to turn around. It's going to turn around. And you were very specific as to maybe reasons why that didn't happen. They hadn't played a lot of games. So, obviously if you only play 5-10 games and you don't shoot well on the three-pointers in 3 of those, your percentage is going to be high. You haven't played a lot of time on the court with the players you've been playing. That was an issue there as well. And I thought it was something that was very interesting last week. I think on the pod we played it where CJ McCollum touched on this is like his 20th game or something, which is nuts because we're now in January. But it just goes to show you that's what we mean a lot of times when injuries play a factor in what those percentages are. But you've been harping on it. To JD's phrase, if you flip the basketball card here, the player card, that player is who that player is with those percentage numbers. And you said that shooting had to come around because they're just better shooters than that.
Yeah, I mean, it just makes sense that eventually they're going to, I guess I was going to say regress to the mean, but it's like they moved forward. They moved in a positive way toward the mean of what they've done throughout their career. So, I mean, there was a long stretch of this season, and hopefully we're out of it now, and we're going to be able to turn a corner to something completely different. But there was a stretch where it was like you could make a list of 15 things that were all negative, and it doesn't make sense that you'd have all of these things happening at the same time where it's a bunch of your key players are injured. The guys who came back from injury were all having like their worst season in several years, all at the same time. It's like that just doesn't add up. It's just so unlikely that I know they have the FanDuel parlays that they talk about on the TV broadcast and stuff like that. It's like these combinations of things are like the chances of all of these things happening are like 5,000 to 1. But yeah, it feels like that's the kind of season that the Pelicans had been having, is a 5,000 to 1 perfect storm in a negative way of like everything that could go wrong has gone wrong. So it is encouraging to see some of that stuff go in the opposite direction. And I do think, to your point of what you were talking about, one of the things that you mentioned was, not only had a lot of these guys not played a lot of games, but they hadn't played a lot of games together. They're at the point now where they've started the same starting lineup 9-10 games in a row, which was unheard of. I mean, we would have killed for that, a few weeks ago, when it seemed like it was a different starting lineup every single game.
Wasn't it something crazy like 17 or 18 in the first 20 to 21 games? It was something absurd like that. I mean, it doesn't make any sense when you think about it like that.
Yeah, so I mean, I definitely think that that's part of it as well, that they've been able to get some continuity. So, and I mean, we talked about CJ and Trey, but another player that just came back from injury that had been out for a long time is Jose Alvarado. He played his 2 games on the weekend. Dejounte Murray didn't come back from his broken hand that he had on opening night. He didn't come back until the night before Thanksgiving. So, I mean, he's only been back for, I'd say about 5 or 6 weeks now. But I think both of those guys as well lately have been playing really well. I mean, Jose, I mentioned some of the stats last week before he came back in terms of his impact. Right now, the Pelicans now are, since the start of last season, they're 43-26 in the games that Jose Alvarado plays, which is a 50-win pace over an 82-game season. They're 13-36 when he doesn't play, which is a 22-win pace. So, I mean, that's a pretty drastic difference. You're talking about a 50-win team or a 22-win team that is not going to even come close to making the playoffs. Another fact that I noticed from this weekend that is a really good sign about the point guards between Jose Alvarado and Dejounte Murray. Dejounte had 24 assists and 5 turnovers in the 2 games against the Wizards. Alvarado had 6 assists and 0 turnovers. So you add those two guys together, and over this weekend, you're talking 30 assists and only 5 turnovers between the two. That's a 6-to-1 assist-to-turnover ratio. And here's a stat, too, about Dejounte that I thought is pretty incredible, too. If you take the 3 games that Dejounte Murray and Jose Alvarado have played, which is the opener against the Bulls and then these 2 games against Washington, in those 3 games, Dejounte has 34 assists, 6 turnovers, which is a 5.7 assist-to-turnover ratio, which is outstanding.
Yeah.
Elite, would be close to leading the league if you did that over the course of the whole season. So 5.7 assist-to-turnover ratio for Dejounte in the 3 games that Jose has played. In every other game that Dejounte has played this season when Jose is not available, his assist-to-turnover ratio is only 1.7. So he's been, granted, small sample. It's only 3 games.
Sure.
But he basically has been 3 times better, more than 3 times better in assist-to-turnover ratio in the 3 games where Jose's played. Now, what exactly is the connection there? I mean, it would probably be a little bit too much of a leap to say that that's directly because of Jose, but, I mean, the fact that you have another guy that is handling the ball and comes in and plays those backup minutes, I think helps. To be totally honest, too, the quality of the opponent there is probably a factor. But either way, I mean, it's unbelievable how much of a difference that those 2 guys make when you have both of them on the court. I mean, I know they're not going to create a separate category in the standings for this, but let's just say the Pelicans are 3-0 when both of those guys have played this season. So that is an encouraging sign as well, and hopefully something that they can keep up.
Look, you are a huge fan of what Jose brings to this team. I loved hearing him speak going into that game on Friday. He wanted to bring that crazy Jose energy. There's an alley-oop in that game. So there is something to that, Jim. There is something to that. And look, yesterday there was a moment in that game, and we hadn't really touched on it just yet, but Trey Murphy goes down. Again, the Pelican season is what it is. He literally is going up for a ball. He comes down on Jonas's heel and rolls an ankle. We'll find out today at practice what that severity is. It happened before them, well, I think last week or something like that. He didn't miss a game. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, hopefully it's something of that nature, right? Sure. But you felt the energy kind of go down a little bit. And then the Pels had to pick that up and found a way to win. So, in a season where I'm not saying you're grasping for things to be positive about, but isn't that a step, though, Jim? Because you felt it. You're like, oh, no. And that lead got down to like 8 or something like that. And it had been a double-digit lead for a while. And then CJ makes a big shot. Dejounte gets that triple-double. And they close out a game they controlled all night. I'm looking for things to be positive about in that it's a trend in the direction you want it to see.
I think what we saw in the fourth quarter Sunday, as well as throughout the game Friday, and then one of the biggest instances of this happening over the course of the season was all the way back in the opener against Chicago, was we're seeing them come up with plays on defense where they're forcing steals, they're forcing turnovers, and they're scoring at the other end. It feels like that was part of what happened in the fourth quarter. Was when there's been games this season where they've been up double digits in the second half or the fourth quarter and they haven't been able to hold on to the lead. And a lot of times you think, okay, that's because of the defense let down, they gave up a big lead, et cetera, et cetera. But a lot of times it's the droughts on offense that really hurt you, where you can't score for a long period of time. So it seems like to me what they did against the Wizards to a pretty big degree was they got a lot more easy baskets. And when you do that, you prevent these 3 or 4 minute stretches where you go scoreless and all of a sudden the double-digit lead that you had is down to 2 or you lost it completely. I mean, Friday's game, they had 32 points off of turnovers against the Wizards, who committed 21 in that game. And it's just something, that's the way they want to play. That was kind of the blueprint going into the season, that you want to be a really disruptive defensive team. That's what they were last season and the season before that when they finished 6th in defense. So if you can do that, I think that is going to make a big difference as well. I mean, another quick stat too, Gus, over the last 5 games, the Pelicans are 8th in turnover percentage. So they've really cut those down, whether it's not just Jose and Dejounte being really good at taking care of the ball and playmaking, but just the team overall has gone from bottom tier of the league, where that's been a really costly part of a lot of games, especially when they played against good teams and good defenses like OKC. It's just been like they've done such a poor job of taking care of the ball that your chances of winning are slim to none. But that's an area that they've improved as well a lot lately, and something that they're going to have to keep doing to be able to keep adding to the wins that they've had over the weekend.
Yeah, look, it was so nice to see Dejounte Murray get a triple-double, but you don't get triple-doubles as a point guard if guys aren't knocking down shots, if he's not seamlessly being a part of that offense. And I think it goes back to kind of what we touched on already, Jim. You're seeing, to your point, now 10, 11 games in a row, same lineup. You're seeing it. I mean, you're seeing not just from the alleys, but you're not seeing as many turnovers like I'm standing next to you and I throw it at your feet.
Right.
Someone goes, Wes Johnson said it, this guy's going to go left. I'm expecting you to go right. That just, I know it sounds silly sometimes to say to listeners or fans, but that's the reality of it. The more you spend time together, the better you're going to see that.
I also think, too, that this would be a better question for Dejounte Murray to answer and discuss. I don't want to put words in his mouth too much, but if you look at the way that some of the other top offensive weapons on the Pelicans have played lately, to me, it would put Dejounte in more of a position of I don't have to go out and score a ton. So it's you play like a more relaxed game. You play a game of I'm going to let the game come to me because CJ's out here getting 50 points and Trey Murphy is out here shooting like one of the best three-point shooters in the league over this recent stretch. So maybe you're in a spot where mentally you're like, I don't have to force as much because we don't have to see me score 25, 30 points for us to have a chance to win the game. I'm going to be able to distribute, and it just seems like he's done that really well, and he's just been really sound. He just hasn't made that many mistakes. The Friday game, he had 12 assists and 1 turnover, which I think was probably his best performance of the season from assist to turnover standpoint. So it just seems like he's making really good progress. He had a really nice behind the back kind of pass last night for a layup. It was beautiful. So I think he's just definitely getting more comfortable. And again, like we talked about with CJ and Trey, this is another extremely key player to the team that is now playing a lot more like what we've seen throughout the first 7 or 8 years of his career than what he looked like over the first month plus after he came back from his injury.
Yeah, I mean, look, there's a reason people were excited about him.
Yeah,
there's a reason this team traded for him.
He was an all-star in 2022.
To your points, the back of the all-star card, the back of your player's card to do that. So, and you mentioned Trey, man, in some of these games as of late, he's had tremendous first halves, which helped the team get going and put in positions. Even though they didn't win at Miami, even though they didn't win in some of these games, they were in position, and he was really their offense. And it's something that I've asked you after games. Are we starting to see the importance of Trey Murphy to this starting lineup, to this team, to this offense? Whereas here's a guy, hey, he's your three-point shooting. He's a guy that can come off the bench. Maybe he can be somebody off that 6 unit. But we've seen games where when he is either not scoring in the second half or defenses adjust to him or he gets injured, the offense comes to a halt. And that's something that we have never been able to say.
Right. And, one of the things that Antonio Daniels said on the TV broadcast Sunday was that Trey Murphy is one of the rare players in the NBA. I mean, he might be the only one that could win the dunk contest and the three-point contest in the same night just because his athleticism makes him one of the most fun dunkers in the league, but he also has the range out to 30, 35 feet. I think when he's at his best and when we see Trey Murphy playing at the level that we know he can based on his potential, that's the kind of comment that you hear is like, it's not just spot up threes. It's not just catch and shoot. He's also doing stuff off the dribble. He's getting all the way to the basket. He's basically maximizing all of the God-given tools that he has, which are pretty immense if you think about it. The package that he has as far as how big he is, and he still has a lot of flexibility, a lot of athleticism. He's improved his ball handling. So, I mean, he's bringing all of that to the table. And that's one of the reasons why, as I mentioned earlier, that he's been a top 20 scorer in the league over the last 5 games.
Yeah, no doubt. And that next step, too, as we transition to the upcoming games, now we're in January, and it's going to be a very busy month for this team. But one of the things he's going to adjust to, and it's part of the growing process, is all of a sudden you go from, oh, that's nice, so they know who he is, and he's on the scouting report, too, we're going to double him. We're going to take him away. We're going to make sure somebody else beats us. And that's a whole different level of learning as a player where now you're a focus, now you're depended on by your team, and now other teams are out to stop you, not other members on your team, right?
Definitely. I mean, that's something that he's going to have to go through as, maybe the next step in the process of him becoming a guy that consistently produces the way he has been lately. But I think the Pelicans also coaches and stuff like that would look at it like, with the way CJ's been playing and shooting lately, you can't devote too much attention to Trey. And then hopefully we'll see Zion back soon. And there's another piece where it's like you can't run everyone at Trey because there's other players that you have to worry about to a major degree. So, but yeah, I'm curious to see. I'm interested to see, how he follows this up on the way he's been playing lately. But I mean, this has been an extended stretch where he's been really productive. We've seen him have weeks where he's been really good, or a game or two here and there. And then, I mean, honestly, some of it is if he has he had a 41-point game against, I think it was Portland a couple of years ago, and then maybe 2 games later he isn't scoring at a high level. But a lot of it is because there's been so many other mouths to feed. There's been so many other high scorers on the court with him at times. But I think now this is definitely the most that they've ever asked from him over a span of, say, 10, 15 consecutive games. So it's been great to see the way that he's responded and the consistency that he's had lately, where it doesn't seem like he has any dips. He's not having those 6-point games, 8-point games. It's like every single night he's giving you 15 to 20 points, and a lot of times a lot more than that.
Yeah, it's double digits. And again, we'll see. We'll get the latest maybe from head coach Willie Green. He got a back-to-back on Tuesday, Wednesday. Now transition to what we got to get going on here because we do have a lot. As the month of January is off and running. But we hope for the best. Again, we've seen him roll an ankle during a game and come back and play the next game. So we'll see what takes place. But you got 4 games this week, Jim, and it's a lot of games here. A little back-to-back. Got some pretty good opponents, in particular certain position at center that makes you maybe want to focus on somebody.
Well, it's a Monday. Thankfully, Jim is always our Friday. It's time for Mr. Eichenhofer to give his players of the week and a player to watch for this week. What you got, big guy?
Let's start with the Week 12 player to watch, which is going to be Yves Missi. I tell you, it's funny. I feel like over the last couple of years, a lot of people have said, the center position is going away. The centers are dinosaurs. There's not that many good bigs anymore, but yet that would be news to Yves Missi, because if you think about during the homestand, some of the players that he went up against, and now if you look at this week as well, I mean, this is a really interesting collection of centers that he has to go against in Week 12. On Tuesday, the Pelicans are playing Minnesota. That's obviously Rudy Gobert. Wednesday, he's going to be facing DeAndre Ayton and Donovan Clingan. Friday, Mr. Embiid in Philadelphia, and then Sunday, Kristaps Porzingis. So not only is it some of the better and best centers in the league, but it's a lot of guys that are completely different styles. So I'm really curious to see how Yves does against those group of players. And by the way, too, just a couple schedule notes that I think are relevant in terms of who the Pelicans are playing against. Tuesday, when the Pelicans play Minnesota, that's actually the second game of a back-to-back for the Timberwolves. They play the Clippers Monday night at home in the Target Center, and the Timberwolves are 3-6 out of their last 9 games, so they've definitely been slumping lately. They've had some really good stretches and some other stretches that were concerning. Right now, it seems like they're in a bit of a slide, so maybe the Pelicans are catching them at a good time. Wednesday, a game against Portland, that's actually the first game of a back-to-back for them, so I'm not sure how that's going to affect what the Trailblazers do in the Smoothie King Center. But Portland beat Milwaukee on the weekend on the road. That actually ended their 8-game road losing streak, so like New Orleans, Portland's had a lot of difficulty winning games on the road. Hopefully the Pelicans can take advantage of that. Friday, the game against the Sixers. Sixers are 11-5 after they started 3-14, so they've really turned things around from how rough their first part of the year was with a lot of guys injured. And then the Celtics on Sunday. By the way, neither of those games for the Philly or Boston are back-to-backs for them, so they'll be able to have guys available. They won't be resting people. Last 10 games, Boston is 5-5. So after starting out at a level where everybody was like, even though Cleveland's having an amazing start, the Celtics are unquestionably the team to beat. They've definitely started to play a little bit. I'm not sure what the reasons for that are. Maybe they're a little mentally tired from going all the way and winning the championship last year and then starting back at the beginning of a regular season. But they have not played as well lately, and it's just been the kind of thing where now all of a sudden Cleveland has a huge lead in the Eastern Conference. But either way, I mean, that's a very difficult game that the Pelicans are going to have to end the weekend.
Yeah, Minnesota's been a surprise team for me this year in terms of the way they ended. And, I mean, everybody was basically – Anthony Edwards was Michael Jordan 2.0, right? At the end of last year, he's he's going to be the best player in the NBA. And this is not about him. The dude dropped 50, right? Didn't he just drop 50? And they lost by 14.
Right. I
heard that this morning. I'm like, that was on Saturday. They lost by 14 to Detroit, I think is what it was. And he dropped 50. So
53, yeah.
Yeah, it's crazy. There's something about chemistry. I don't know if the Karl Anthony Towns trade had something to do with that or not. We kind of saw they had to adjust when they got Rudy Gobert, and then last year looked like they adjusted, and then this year, how much of that? It'll be interesting to kind of look at and see, like, when I take a peek at Minnesota, why are they different? I thought for sure they would look like how OKC's looking right now.
You know, it's interesting, too. I think Minnesota is also an example. I mean, you mentioned some of the specific reasons why they might have dropped off a lot from where they were last year, where they won 50-something games and they were in the running for the 1 seed. But I think what we've also seen across the West is it's hard to have multiple years in a row where you're in the elite of the conference. I mean, if you look at the 4 teams that made the semifinals last year in the West, OKC is really the only one that has come back and played at that same kind of level. They've actually surpassed what they did last year in terms of, I mean, they're 30-5. But I mean, the Nuggets have had their struggles. I mean, they're 4th right now. They're 20-14, so that's still pretty good. But I mean, Dallas has had a bunch of injuries. They're 20-15, and then Timberwolves are 10th at 17-17. So I think there's definitely reasons why they've fallen off. But I mean, one of the bigger ones to me is just the West. It's going to be hard to just continually be a top tier team in the West. We've seen already some changes in terms of the teams that are at the top, other than OKC. So. I mean, we've probably discussed this a little bit before. You get a little bit worse in the West, and you can get a lot worse in the standings. You know, if on paper your talent is a little bit worse or you have some more injuries, I mean, you can drop pretty rapidly. Unfortunately, that's been the case on a different level with the Pelicans as well. But yeah, I think that's definitely part of it. The Randall Towns trade definitely hasn't worked out that well for them. Dante DiVincenzo was a really good pickup, but he's had a really bad start to the season. It's only been recently that he's played a lot better and looked a lot more like the guy that was a key part of what the Knicks did last season, where they went, deeper in the playoff, went to the second round of Game 7 of the second round of the playoffs. So, I mean, some of that stuff just hasn't worked out the way that they expected it to, and that's why they're in the position they are. But, I mean, it's still a really challenging game for the Pelicans, and I think, too, I'm looking forward to Tuesday because, we're being totally honest here, putting all the cards on the table. Pelicans won 2 games, and it's great that they did that. But there's a lot of people, pretty much everyone around the league is like, well, but you played the Wizards. So now if you can beat the Timberwolves and make it 3 wins in a row, I think that'll definitely get people's attention a little bit. And now you could start to build forward as far as now you beat a team that is definitely somebody that thought that they we're going to be able to go deep again in the Western Conference and then play Portland on Wednesday. So, I mean, I would love to see the Pelicans be able to just string together a bunch of wins, but it's going to be tough to try to get win number 3 in a row on Tuesday against the Wolves.
Yeah, and Portland took 2 from you earlier in the season there as well, and they're young and athletic too. I'm with you. You want to see a string here of some games there, and especially, let's be honest, after not winning a couple of games at home, especially in that 5-game homestand, these 2 at home. So
yeah, and I mean the Trailblazers, you mentioned that you lost 2 of 3 to them. I'm curious to see how this game goes because the Pelicans have a lot different collection of players available, I think, for this game than they did for some of the ones that were earlier in the season as well. So hopefully you'll get better results from that standpoint as well. So should be fun. I'm definitely looking forward to being in the blender on Tuesday and Wednesday.
And speaking of the blender, player of the week, if you've been checking out these games, it's an easy one. It's an obvious one, right?
Yeah, I mean, would you throw me out of the studio if I said it wasn't CJ McCollum? Would you be like, Jim, you got to go?
No, because we talked about Trey Murphy's importance. We've talked about, Yves Missi was the Western Conference Rookie of the month.
That's true.
Of December.
Okay, all right. Okay.
But I wouldn't toss you out.
You would politely ask me to leave, though.
Look, I mean, he's to your point. You know what? There's something I want to play that had really stood out to me yesterday when we were doing our pregame, and because he spoke for 14 minutes after the game.
The game Friday, yeah.
Yes.
That's right.
14 minutes. And he said some things in there that really stood out to me, and I think if you're a Pels fan, you want to hear it. First, here's your pat on the back. Okay, we like to pat ourselves in the back here when the graph is sitting next to you. We're the pat on the back fact checkers over here. But you kept saying that this guy is a professional. He's a professional shooter. He's going to put in the work. It's going to come around. Listen to what he said.
But in terms of the game, it's just basketball. I think as life kind of progresses, you realize that it's just a game, and you got to prepare and put your time in, and that eventually things will turn around and go your way. This season obviously has been difficult for a lot of reasons, and we haven't won games, and we haven't played particularly well consistently, and it's frustrating. But I think for us, it's just about being professional, and I pride myself on trying to do things the right way, trying to prepare. And I haven't shot the ball great this season. I played okay, but I told some of our coaches, I said I'll be at 40% in 10 days. Just give me 10 days. I feel good. I've been getting my reps. I've been doing what I'm supposed to do, and I'm gonna start winning within the margins and impacting winning. And obviously, we took a step in the right direction. We got more games to win, but I think it was just about us going out playing hard, and the team that played hard was going to win tonight.
I love that because, I mean, you can kind of hear to your points, like, I know it's going to come around, and I know it's going to happen, though, but I have to do this.
No, it means a lot to me, and I think what I take away from the game now, like, it's great to score 50 and hit threes and do that stuff, but, I mean, I work so hard. Like, I sacrifice so much time. I go to the gym at night. I'm on the table. I miss a lot of time, away from my family, putting time into the game. So it's like when you have success, it's like, okay, like, this isn't all for naught. You know what I mean? Like, there's a reason why, I'm able to hit 10 threes. I was at 34% from three, and I'll be at 40 in like 6 days. But there's a reason why. Like, I work hard. I take advantage of my time. I understand how to play this game at a high level, and I know it's a stake. I know it's January. I know it's in February. I'm aware of everything, and I think for me, it's like I have this small amount of time to play this game, and I want to take advantage of it. And nights like this, it's just a reminder that the work works. I was raised to work hard and go after what I want in life, and I told my wife I have a small window to hoop. I'm going to take advantage of it, and then, I'll go home and sit down, and you can go be a dentist and do whatever you want. And I think it's about picking the right sacrifices, and if I'm going to be away from my kids, I better be playing well. You know what I'm saying? Like, otherwise I'm wasting my time.
I tell you, Gus, I mean, not only Week 11 Player of the Week, but also the Interview of the Week. And it's interesting with, you mentioned 14 minutes. It's like, I watched the whole thing, and it keeps you interested the whole time. It's not like he's just saying a bunch of cliches and, one game at a time, the stuff that we hear all the time. I mean, there's a lot of really interesting points that he made during that long talk with the media after Friday's game. But, I mean, one of the things that he mentioned was he's like, I'll get back to 40%. I think at his lowest, he was at 34% not that long ago. He's already up to 37.8% from three-point range on the season. So, I mean, he's inching very close already to his 40% goal. It helps when you go 10 for 16 in a game on Friday the way he did. But, yeah, CJ McCollum, Player of the Week. Over the 4 games, he averaged 32.5 points. He was 25 for 46 on three-pointers, which is 54%. And he also shot 56% from the field overall. I think one of the underrated parts of his 50-point game Friday also was, I mentioned 10 for 16 on threes. He was also 8 for 11 on twos. And it seemed like the combination of stuff that he did where he had a play where he kind of cleaned up a rebound, put it right back in for a floater. Yeah. He had some runners. He had some driving layups. I think he had maybe a reverse layup or two. Just the fact that, I mean, even without the three-point shooting in that game, if you look at just his twos and his free throws, he would have had a productive night overall. So I guess that's how you get to 50 points is you just do everything well offensively. And I was just really impressed by the way that he just capitalized on every opportunity he had in that game. He only took 27 shots overall to get his 50 points. So, I mean, he almost scored 2 points per shot, which I think he would take that every single time.
Yeah, no doubt. I think that's one of the things to keep an eye on here as that continues to grow. As you mentioned, at some point, I know we've been seeing at practice Zion, Brandon Ingram taking shots and stuff. So maybe this month, some point this month, we'll see some of these players come in. I know Willie Green last week said it's still some time for BI. But Zion, I think last week was cleared to start practicing, or this week coming up, he's going to be practicing and stuff. So, look, it's getting closer to kind of seeing, and it'll be another adjustment period for those guys to start playing together.
Yeah, but I mean, there's 40-plus games left in the season, and it's not realistic to think that they can get back in the race for the postseason. But, I mean, you want to establish over these last 40-plus games that you're one of the better teams in the league, you're one of the better teams in the West, and I think they can do that when I guess I should probably slow down a little bit and say baby steps. Let's get to 3 wins in a row, 4 wins in a row, 5 wins in a row, and then go for a bigger goal. But I just want to see them just be more successful and keep reminding us, I think the way they did on the weekend, that this is not a bad team. This team has a lot of talent. This team can win games. It can score a lot of points. It can make a lot of 3-pointers. It can do a lot of the things that lead to successful basketball. So that's really what I want to see over the last 3+ months of the regular season.
8 games left in the month of January at home, and I bring that up to close out this podcast because you may have to make some adjustments to it. You may have known this Super Bowl is going to be played here in the first full week of February here. So it's not just Super Bowl week that you're going to have to worry about when it comes to where you're parking. Even if you're normally parking, say, like Garage 5, like a lot of us employees and stuff, we're having to park in the Champion Square Lodge. So there's going to be a lot of different adjustments. The best thing I can tell you is over the next couple of days, we're going to do our best to let everybody know how to get in and where to park, because access entry into the facility is going to be a little different there as well. So Pelicans.com, I'm being told, is the best way to go check that out during this week. By our next podcast on Wednesday, we may even have a little sit down with Mike Haas, who obviously knows that area a lot well. He's going to be getting a lot of information. All you need to know, you even heard the mayor yesterday, if you watched the news yesterday. This week, today, January 6th, starts the ramping up and the transitioning for that entire area towards the Super Bowl. So I know you think of Super Bowl as that week. I'm telling y'all, it starts now. It starts this week. It starts today. So we're still trying to get info, and especially with what happened last week, just be prepared. If you come to a Pels game, there's 8 left this month. It's just going to be a little adjustment. You have to park in a different lot, or you may have to get to the Dome Arena area a different way, like I think off of Loyola and stuff. But we're going to get all of that for you. Pelicans.com this week. Check that out. We'll have some more info on Wednesday. If not, just hitch a ride with Jim.
Yeah, I got plenty of room. No, February 9th is the Super Bowl, so like you said, it's Super Bowl month, not Super Bowl week. So, yeah, we'll have to make some adjustments and stuff like that. But it was interesting. I saw Mr. Rod Walker, who covers the Pelicans for NOLA.com, had a poll up on X of which fan base you would least like to see, which team and fan base you would least like to see be in the Super Bowl. So I thought that was interesting. I don't know if you had any thoughts about that.
I know you like your Seahawks, right?
Well,
they're not going to be here,
he
right?
left it only to teams that are in the playoffs.
That are in the playoffs.
So they weren't eligible
likely to see. I don't know, to be honest with you. I don't think there's anybody that
You know who I most want to see? I think I most want to see the Bills and the Lions. Those are the 2 teams that I think I most want to see.
I like
not
that.
just those teams, but those fan bases. Neither of them have ever won a Super Bowl. Obviously, the Bills have been in where they've been in 4, lost all of them. The Lions, I don't think, have ever even made it to the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
So those are ones that, spinning it into a positive, Rod Walker, I'm going to say the Bills and Lions are the ones I most want to see. The ones I least want to see, I'd have to think about that a little bit. I kind of don't want to see the Chiefs, and nothing personal against them, but just because they've won, how many have they won? 2 or 3 in the last 4 or 5 years. So I'm good with the Chiefs not coming here. And in the NFC, I'd have to think about that. I know a lot of people. I'm not a local in terms of being born here, although I've lived here long enough. I know a lot of people said they don't want to see Tampa Bay as a division rival come here. So, but
well, Jim, I don't know. You were here because you've been here for 19 years.
17.
There was a there was a time it came this close to having the unfortunate ability or chance that we would be driving down Poitras and have to see Atlanta Falcon flags.
Wow.
As they almost, they blew it. in typical Falcon fashion. But the 49ers, when they played the Ravens
That's
here.
right. Yep.
That game was in Atlanta.
Yep.
And they were counting quote.
Yeah, they were like 10 yards away or something like that.
It was going to, and that you know who would have absolutely been miserable for an entire week of
Mr.
Falcon
Graffinini?
fans.
Oh, he would have been.
Do you remember
unbearable.
what that was like, Graf? Do you remember that week? A possibility.
I think the second most hated team in my NFL career is the San Francisco 49ers.
Oh, so both of them.
Oh, so they were.
And
They did
I
make
was
it.
rooting for the 49ers like I was rooting for the Saints that day.
Yeah.
That would have been ridiculously miserable.
Because they put little flags. They line
the
Poitras.
entire
Yeah.
CBD would have
Would've been
had
Falcons
Dirty
flag.
Bird. Oh,
You
my
would have
God.
had a Falcon
That's
logo
funny.
on one of the hotels projected
That's
on
funny.
it.
Yeah.
Yep. So we dodged a major bullet right there.
It's funny because we had just maybe like a year earlier we had just moved into this facility out here in Metairie where we're recording, and so the NFC, I think it's probably the same way this year. The NFC team will whoever makes it from the NFC will train out here.
Yes.
And I remember one day walking outside, and I was like, guy was walking right towards me. I'm like, is that Jim Harbaugh? And it was. So that was kind of a shocker. I was like, wait, didn't realize the 49ers
That's
were already
true.
here.
Yeah,
So,
we'll have somebody training here.
Yep.
It's here in Tulane, huh, Graf? I think the two spots.
That's usually
how it
the
is?
protocol.
Yeah.
There
Okay.
it goes. By the way, how do Falcons' postseason hopes look?
Eliminated.
Eliminated. That's a real shame. It's a real shame that happened. For the Graf, the voice of your New Orleans Pelicans, he's going to be busy here this month here as well. Jim Eichenhofer, always a pleasure, sir. Thank you for joining us.
Thanks, Gus.
Yep, and thank you for tuning us in on the latest edition of the New Orleans Pelicans podcast. We'll see you on Wednesday.
Thanks for listening to the New Orleans Pelicans Podcast. Join us 3 times per week on Pelicans.com, the Pelicans mobile app, the iHeartRadio app, or where you get your podcasts. And be sure to give Jim and Gus a follow on X at Jim_Eichenhofer and GCat_17. We'll see you next time, right here on the New Orleans Pelicans Podcast.